Congressman Ro Khanna joined our hotspot brethren Nick Cruse for a conversation about whether or not the Democratic Party is redeemable. And I'm not gonna lie, by the end of the video, I didn't know whether to laugh or feel bad for him. You see, the premise of the video was Nick believes that based off of the evidence that we have, that progressives, quote unquote, like Ro Khanna, AOC, and Bernie are essentially there to lose on purpose. They're effectively components put in place by the system to kill progressive movements rather than cultivate them. For example, Nick brings up the fact that the working class movement put together a $400 million campaign for Bernie Sanders only for him to turn around and endorse Genocide Joe.
I believe having a strong anti-war movement is way more important than supporting another fraudulent Bernie campaign where we throw away $400 million instead of building mutual aid societies. We need to worry about taking care of ourselves. Instead of spending $400 million on Bernie, we need to take care of our neighbors. We need to make sure we have diapers. We need to make sure we have food. I know that a lot of people, you're in Congress, you make a lot of money. That's not something you worry about. But when I see the amount of money that we spend, and there are people who was making pennies that was donating to Bernie, to see what you guys have supported.
And of course, we know it wasn't just Bernie Sanders, but Ro Khanna himself, who was co-chair of Bernie Sanders' campaign, and AOC, and Ilhan Omar, and the like. All of them endorsed Joe Biden, a segregationist, warmongering sex pest. Now here's where it gets a little bit interesting, because Rose said that that's what he had to do as a member of the party. He felt like the alternative was worse. But he argues that we almost did it. And if Bernie would have been president, things right now, not only domestically, but around the world would be different.
But I think what we have to do as progressives in elective politics is to make judgments and decisions that'll move our politics further. And Bernie Sanders almost won. It was a miracle how far he's come. And what I would say to your viewers is, even if you disagree with me, please don't give up on the possibility of progressive politics, because we're so close. And I guarantee you, if we got someone like Bernie Sanders in the Oval Office, it would make an enormous difference for the nation and the world.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Regarding foreign policy, Bernie's advisor is Matt Dusk. Matt Dusk is almost as bad as a war hawk as Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Bernie Sanders himself supports the war in Ukraine. And although Bernie may be critical of Netanyahu and has recently come to terms with the fact that there is a genocide happening in Gaza, there's no guarantee that he would actually do anything to prevent the genocide from happening. And especially considering the fact that Bernie, outside of maybe the war in Iraq, has supported directly or indirectly through verbiage or through legislation every single operation overseas to overthrow or conquer a government since he's been in DC. But we can even take it a step further, Ro. Why did Bernie Sanders lose? It's because the party that you believe is redeemable, the party that you believe we can coalesce around and strategize with for the working class, they cheated him. And the working class people who donated $400 million to his campaign, which means you turned around along with Bernie, AOC, and the like, and endorsed the people who fucked us over. And more or less, Nick made that clear during the interview. So at that point in the interview, Ro had actually done a better job explaining to us why we shouldn't coalesce around the Democratic Party rather than explaining why we should. Especially considering that Bernie went out of his way to then endorse candidates and support Joe Biden, despite the fact that he's not even part of the Democratic Party, supposedly. And then Nick explains to Ro, how can we get behind you calling yourself a progressive if you're going to get behind people like Hakeem Jeffries, who literally said he is dedicated to destroying the progressive working class movement within the party?
And you voted for Hakeem Jeffries. And Hakeem Jeffries, his entire goal, he made it very clear, was that he wanted to destroy the progressive movement in the Democratic Party. And not only do you vote for him, you often provide propaganda for him.
Then Ro goes on to talk about some of the things that he personally supports, but that doesn't address the fact that one of the leaders of the party literally wants to destroy the movement that you supposedly want to create. So if cheating the candidate that you worked for and cheating the working class out of $400 million wasn't a red line, and having party leaders literally say, whatever progressive movement you're trying to build within the party, we are dedicated to destroying it, isn't a red line, Nick rightfully asks, then what the hell is your red line, Ro? What is the thing that would make you finally say we can no longer support these people?
The point I was trying to make is that a red line has to be established somewhere, right? So I don't know whether you will vote for someone who's an anti-gay bigot. I don't know whether you will vote for someone who openly advocates for bombing Jewish people. But I believe the red line has been already made, been crossed by the Democratic Party, which is why I'm supportive of third parties.
Now, Ro never answers that question. But Nick answered it quick. It is genocide. Genocide, at the bare minimum, should have been the red line for progressives. And it wasn't. Ro even admits to going out and campaigning for Kamala, knowing that she was going to continue to fund the genocide in Gaza.
Do I think the Democratic Party needs to have a more human rights approach to the issue of Palestine and the Middle East? Absolutely. But what I would ask your folks is, look at what Bernie is saying on the issue, look at what I've said, look at what others have said, and don't just think that the Democratic Party, that was Joe Biden's view on that issue or Kamala Harris's view on that issue, is fixed, and that there is not a way that we can have any more progressive vision going forward.
So you agree it's not a binary choice then, because you say you support third parties? Because if you support third parties, that means by definition it's not a binary choice, isn't it?
I think that's
now,
fair.
And effectively, Ro dodged the question, letting us know that for him, as long as he's a part of the Democratic Party, there is no line that they can cross that would make him challenge them in any substantive way that would benefit the working class, the people that he supposedly is in Congress to represent. So Nick once again brings up the Democrats' support for the war in Ukraine and the fact that it's not about empathy for the Ukrainian people. It's about a hatred, a visceral hatred for Putin. And he reminds Ro that there are U.S. officials that make it clear that it is about money and the fact that Ukraine has trillions of dollars of resources that they can't let Russia get their hands on. Now, Ro says that might be their motives, but the Democratic Party and their motives and Joe Biden and their motives are about empathy for the Ukrainian people and their right to self-determination and to defend themselves. Now, Ro, you know you fucked up when you said that, right? Because you know my man was quick to say, oh, so what you're saying is Hamas and the Palestinian people have a right to defend themselves. And based off of Khanna's own logic, not only do Palestinians have the right to defend themselves, but the Democrats should be dedicating time, energy, and political capital ensuring that they have the aid and the weaponry to do so. Because Ro made it clear that his supposed problem with Russia's invasion of Ukraine is a violation of international law and ensuring that Russia doesn't think that they can go around taking over whatever country they want to. Okay, so arm the Palestinian people, arm Hezbollah, help arm Iran, because it seems like their goal is to make sure that Israel doesn't go around conquering whatever country they want to. And seeing as the Democrats are so concerned about the Ukrainian people and state sovereignty, it would make sense that you support Hamas and Palestine the same way that you support Ukrainian neo-Nazis in Ukraine. Because Nick also wanted to know, how can you support Ukrainian neo-Nazis and then try to call Hamas terrorists? Especially Ro, who literally helped write legislation to make sure that we didn't send aid to Ukraine because of the likelihood that weapons would end up in the hands of neo-Nazis. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, because Ro assured us that the State Department assured him that those weapons would only end up in the hands of the Ukrainian military and not in the hands of people like the Azov Battalion. Except during those foreign policy briefings, I guess someone forgot to tell Ro that the Azov Battalion was made an official part of the Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian military as a reward for helping them conquer the Ukrainian government on behalf of the United States. So the only thing that Ro managed to achieve during this interview was show us that progressives in Congress are either ignorant, duplicitous, or both. That they have no power and they never will, and will continue to cede power or any influence that they might have as long as the person they're ceding power to has a D by their name. And that progressives in Congress don't have a red line when it comes to the Democratic Party. So I personally appreciate Ro going on and doing that interview with Nick, because he made it perfectly clear for everyone to see working within the Democratic Party, or the Republican Party for that matter, will get you nothing. It's time for change. and the Democrats ain't gonna be the one to give it to you. So I appreciate you, Ro, for making that abundantly clear to the entire country.
So it's in our interest to make sure that Russia doesn't take over the place. It's the breadbasket of really the developing world. 50% of all the food going to Africa comes out of Ukraine.
So, Ro, is it about rare earth minerals? Is it about money, or is it actually caring about the Ukrainian people?
For me, it's about the principle of self-determination. I mean, that's what influenced me growing up, right? My grandfather's struggle against colonialism and the belief that people should have the right to have self-determination of their nationhood. It's why I support a Palestinian state, self-determination for Palestinians. It's why I support a Jewish state of the state of Israel.
Do you support Hamas and the right for Palestinians to engage in self-defense against Israel?
I don't support Hamas.
So you don't support. So Hamas is an organization with Palestinians, correct? Israel is illegally occupying Gaza and the West Bank and committing a genocide according to international courts. If anyone has the right to self-defense, it will be Palestinians, aka Hamas. Well, look, so how do you oppose that, but you want to wage war with Russia because the United States is in their backyard?
I come from a tradition of belief that nonviolence demonstration and the tradition of Gandhi or King is what's going to help.
So why not apply it to Ukraine? There was a peace deal on the table,
because that was an invasion of a sovereign state.
Israel's invading Palestine,
and I believe we need to have a